Good evening, I'm Ryan Bonazzo. Thank you for joining us. Mother Nature played havoc with outdoor Remembrance Day ceremonies across the Northwest today, but no amount of rain or wind was going to stop those in the Thunder Bay area from paying their respects to the country's fallen war heroes. We'll start our coverage with the South Side ceremony, which was moved from City Hall to the Slovak Legion because of the bad weather. Kurt Black reports.
Torrential rainfall and strong winds may have put a stop to the Remembrance Day ceremony at the Cenotaph in front of City Hall, but thankfully the Slovak Legion was already planning to host the attendees after the ceremony and instead hosted the ceremony itself. A couple of hundred people filled into the hall, with the ceremony beginning with the color party marching solemnly before nearly a dozen wreaths were placed on the stage. Nancy Ringham, the Legion's padre who braved the conditions at the Waverly Park ceremony, raced back to the Legion to close the ceremony with the Lord's Prayer. Southside organizer Ken Malenko was very thankful for those at the Slovak Legion for stepping up in their time of need, making this ceremony possible.
So my thanks really go out to President Vic Renoff and the entire Slovak staff here. They really came through in the crunch and were able to support all of our cadets, our troops, and our firing party, all of us to move into the Slovak at the last minute. So we greatly appreciate it. And this way, we still pay our respects to our veterans and our fallen on at least an indoor service.
One of those in attendance was Marianne Leet, who lived through the bombings of the Battle of Britain and was overjoyed to be able to pay her respects to all those who have served, adding there isn't a day that goes by that she isn't grateful for the sacrifice made by those brave men and women.
But you have to realize how great these men were, what they did for that country, both in Canada and Britain. I appreciate them every day of my life.
Slovak Legion President Vic Renoff says he was honored to be able to play a role in making this ceremony a reality and hopes this can be a start of a return to normal after the usual Remembrance Day ceremonies at Fort William Gardens were canceled during the pandemic.
I always longed to have this coming back, and now this is many steps towards full recovery, and it just warms your heart to see everybody come out.
Kurt Black, TBT News.
Meanwhile, on the north side of town, the traditional ceremony at the Waverly Park Cenotaph did manage to go ahead as planned despite the harsh conditions. Approximately 200 people braved the weather to honor the fallen. That's a big increase from last year when strict capacity limits were in place. Catalina Gillies has the story.
It was a windy, rain-soaked affair at Waverly Park, but that didn't stop around 200 Thunder Bay residents from gathering for the traditional Remembrance Day ceremony. Attendees held their hands over their hoods while struggling to hear the tribute over the howling winds. Master of Ceremonies George Romick from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 5 said the conditions were quite fitting.
For what the soldiers, the sailors, and the airmen had to go through, like this was almost like North Atlantic weather. It was brutal, but the soldiers of all the units here and the public, it was great to see the number of public out here today in these very trying conditions.
Although the turnout was much greater than last year's event due to eased COVID-19 restrictions, wreaths were still laid out ahead of the ceremony to keep the crowd size down.
Hopefully next year it'll be much better weather and we'll be able to have everybody lay the wreaths in honor of their loved ones and all the soldiers that were killed in action.
95-year-old World War II veteran Roy Lamore says the harsh weather conditions forced him to miss his first Remembrance Day event since he left the Navy. However, he was able to celebrate afterwards at the Branch 5 Legion with fellow veterans and cadets.
Enjoy my Legion because you meet old-timers, you meet newcomers, and today is one of the nicest days, not because of Remembrance Day, but the group to hear. There's not too many old veterans left, but other than that, we got a good military background at Thunder Bay.
Well, today's always very emotional. It's a big day. It's important to remember because what we're given was so lots by their sacrifices.
Although the conditions were not ideal and the pandemic is still prevalent, the veterans were happy to see so many people pay tribute to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. Catalina Gillies, TBT News.
Well, the Fort William First Nation Remembrance Day service once again took place on top of Mount McKay, and despite the miserable weather, organizers made sure the ceremony did still go ahead. Among the invited guests honoring the contributions of Indigenous veterans was Anishinaabe Nation Grand Chief Derek Fox, who carried the NAN Veterans Eagle staff. The mountaintop ceremony was condensed due to the rain and high winds, but still featured a drumming ceremony, a moment of silence, and wreath laying for the more than 30 people in attendance. Event organizer Catherine Banning spoke about the importance of the day.
Service has been started in about 1995 by my father, Private Frank Banning, in an effort to help him cope with his PTSD from World War II. And it's just a wonderful service usually, but the weather's not cooperating today, so it is what it is. But the soldiers have been through worse conditions than this, so we can barrel through it today.
We'll have more on Remembrance Day and the national ceremony in Ottawa coming up a little later on the news hour. And spoiler alert, the weather was a little better in the nation's capital. Well, the big storm that hit the Northwest forced Synergy North crews to deal with some small power outage. The LRCA recorded 35 to 50 millimeters of rain, fortunately though, without any major flooding. In the western part of the region, however, the storm manifested in the form of snow and ice, causing a few thousand people to lose power. It also forced the closure of Highway 17 from Chappaqua all the way to the Manitoba border. The full shutdown came around 9:30 this morning after a number of incidents along the route, including a collision at Tower Hill on the eastern side of Ignace around 7 a.m. There's no word on any injuries, but OPP announced that all lanes have been closed. Ontario 511 also reported many disabled vehicles across that part of the region, which were impeding traffic. The 511 website includes camera views at various spots along the highway showing the snow and ice-covered sections with just a few vehicles passing by. There's no word yet on when the highway will reopen. Some sad pandemic news to report. A new COVID-19 death has been reported today in the Thunder Bay District. The health unit offered its condolences on social media. Corey Nordstrom has more on that and also brings us reaction from Dr. Janet DeMille to Health Canada's approval of the Pfizer booster shot.
For the first time since June, the Thunder Bay District Health Unit announced a new death in its daily case announcement of COVID-19. It's the 65th death from the virus since the pandemic began. There are now 21 active cases in the district, with one new case being reported. Little can be said about the individual who died, such as their vaccination status, but medical officer Dr. Janet DeMille says it's an example of the severity of this virus and notes people should take solace knowing there is a vaccine readily available.
In general, what we're seeing is that serious illness and serious outcomes are more common in unvaccinated people.
In efforts to protect more people from COVID-19, Health Canada has approved the Pfizer vaccine for booster shots on all Canadians over 18.
This is really, I think, adds sort of another layer of protection.
It's anticipated that the third dose won't be available to much of the population until January, as the booster shots are recommended 6 months after the second vaccination.
As time increases from somebody's second dose, that they could experience some waning of immunity, where we might then experience, as a community, higher numbers of sort of vaccinated people having COVID-19 and potentially spreading it on.
As the virus spreads further in some portions of the province, Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health encourages regional health bodies to strengthen restrictions when they see fit.
We need to, as a province and as a community, find the right balance between measures and allowing ourselves to have, as much as normal activities as we can.
DeMille says there is currently no need to impose further restrictions here in the Thunder Bay District. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
One day after Ontario pressed pause on the next step of its reopening plan, the province is reporting its highest daily case count in more than a month, with 642 new infections. Colin DeMello reports on the rising caseload.
At the Candles Banquet Hall in Mississauga, wedding contracts had to be reviewed today to keep up with capacity limits.
You know, who had a higher number of guests, which room they were in, we have to shift them around. Is the date still going to be working out for them if they have 300 or 400 people and they are in mid-November? So there's a lot of things to think about.
The Ford government paused the reopening plan for 28 days yesterday amid a concerning rise in cases. Across the province, new cases are up, and the 7-day average sits at 532, up 28% from this time last week. The reasons behind the surge can vary. In Peel region, for example, banquet halls have led to outbreaks.
The places where we have seen outbreaks in the region of Peel have been situations where the people have been non-compliant with masking, certification, and other precautions.
In other regions of the province, low vaccination rates have been a contributing factor, while province-wide, schools account for the greatest number of setting-based outbreaks. Public health officials say the colder weather will drive people indoors and drive up the case count, jeopardizing the province's plan to lift the proof of vaccination requirements in January.
If things continue to worsen, perhaps they'll continue to look at all the other measures to make sure that they're doing what's needed to keep Peel residents as well as all of us in Ontario safe.
Meanwhile, business owners are asking the Ford government for financial help.
3 ballrooms, 200 events a year. If you cut us down again by 50%, we still got to pay rent, we still got to pay bills, and yeah, things add up.
Something the government is not committing to.
More information has been released by the Thunder Bay Police regarding a fatal auto pedestrian crash near Oliver Road that happened late Tuesday night. Police responded to the scene near Beckwick Road after a male pedestrian was reportedly struck by a passing SUV. Acting Traffic Sergeant Sal Carchidi says they're still in the early stages of the investigation.
Upon arrival, civilian bystanders as well as officers initiated life-saving measures, and a male was transported to the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Centre. Unfortunately, with those efforts, he still succumbed to his injuries and passed away as a result of the collision. His name's not being released, just out of respect for the family, but he was a 42-year-old male from Thunder Bay.
Carchidi is urging anyone with information or dash cam footage to contact Thunder Bay Police or Crime Stoppers. Lakehead School Board officials are looking to put a dark chapter behind them after the second person convicted in a series of threats against Hammershold High School received her sentence in court yesterday. The school was forced to close or go into lockdown more than a dozen times in the winter and spring of 2019. The culprits used a loophole in the Crime Stoppers system to repeatedly call in anonymous threats about violence to students and staff, shootings, and explosives in the school. A male student who was just 14 at the time was given 12 months probation this summer. The other accused was sentenced yesterday. Emily Jade Pakrashi was 18 at the time. She's been given 3 months of house arrest and 18 months probation. Lakehead Board Director Ian McRae says it was a difficult time for both students and staff.
I think all of us are glad to have some closure to it, and quite frankly, it's not really been a topic of conversation over the last little while. Other things have sort of taken precedence. I think we're all, again, very pleased that there is closure to it and that the individuals involved have moved on to in a more positive vein in their lives. Certainly the remorse is a big part of it, and that I think both individuals have shown that they've learned from it.
McRae estimates the threats cost the board about $82,000 in added security and other measures. Thunder Bay Police estimate the costs to its service at more than $270,000. Well, progress is being made regarding the dispute in Manitowoc between volunteer firefighters and township officials. The 21 fire service members all took an unplanned leave of absence on Monday, citing a lack of communication over the plan to hire a new fire chief. The firefighters agreed to return to duty Tuesday afternoon after agreeing to a private meeting with the town council. Mayor John McEachern says he's pleased with the respectful discussion which happened last night. He notes council respects the integral role that firefighters play in the community. Another meeting is planned for next week, where the mayor and council will provide a response to the firefighters' concerns. The volunteer members will stay on duty until that meeting is held. For the first time since the pandemic closed live theater stages in March of 2020, the cast and crew with Badani Theatre are back on stage with a global event celebrating the local theatre.
You're all alone, and the pretty birds have flown, honey, I'm still free. Take a chance on me.
The local theatre group will join more than 2,500 theatrical organizations from all 50 U.S. states and more than 40 countries, producing their own production of All Together Now. The production hosts a variety of songs from Annie, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Hairspray, and many more. Director Robert Perrier and performer Lee Wood say the past year has been challenging, and they're excited to get back to those Broadway musicals.
It's a sad place, an empty theater. So to have people here starting on Friday, to be able to experience the show, for all of us who have been sitting, waiting anxiously, it's an amazing time to step foot back on stage. And I can say that all of us will never take that for granted again.
Oh, I can't begin to tell you how exciting it is to have everybody back on the stage together. We are a community theater family, and we've missed each other so much, and we are just so thrilled and so excited to be bringing Broadway back to Thunder Bay.
All Together Now will be performed this Friday and Saturday evening at the Paramount Theatre on Court Street. Tickets are available on the group's website. And just a reminder, if you missed any of our local